Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Hello and welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by AMSOIL. AMSOIL and I are working together to give you the tools that you need, whether you're a supercross racer, desert UTV racer, a snowmobiler, ATV, whatever it is. We are trying to give you the tools so that you can learn how to better market yourself and drive more value for your sponsors. We are your guides to motorsports sponsorship. And ultimately, we believe that there's a lot more that this industry can do. And we're going to do that. We're going to make motorsports better through you and with you, because we know that together, working towards one cause, we can definitely make this entire industry bigger and better. But I want to talk about AMSOIL for a minute, and specifically about your truck. Now, how often do you think about your motor oil? Probably not that often, unless it's time for an oil change. But here's why you should be thinking about your motor oil for your truck. It is the only thing preventing your engine, which is incredibly expensive, from wearing out and breaking down. To keep your truck running strong, you should look for oil that has that extra little bit of added wear protection. For example, AMSOIL Signature Series. So this is the synthetic motor oil that I've been running in my truck for a long time now, and it is absolutely phenomenal. A ton of good data out there too. But it delivers 75% more engine protection against horsepower loss and wear than is even required by the leading industry standard. It provides next level protection for today's demanding engines, and that's what you need to keep these things running for a long time. Now, what I need you to do is go on over to your phone or your computer, whatever it is, and go to amsoil.com/rider to find out more about this oil. Please consider making the switch to AMSOIL synthetic motor oil today to keep your vehicle running great tomorrow. Now, coming up on this show, we have our featured guest, the Maddog himself, Lorin Morrell of Maddog Media Marketing. And before we get into that show, there's a couple other things I want to cover with you. One, I would love to get your feedback. And one of the best ways of doing that is actually through iTunes. So if you go on iTunes, leave a rating review, it does a couple things. One, I get to hear what is on your mind. But two, it also drives more exposure for the show, which then allows us to continue to exist and bring on amazing guests consistently. So head over to iTunes, leave a rating review. And whatever podcast player you use, subscribe. That's a good bet for you to not miss any of our upcoming shows. You can actually set your podcast player up to auto download, so just go right to your phone. So definitely subscribe. We actually have our next guest coming on, the creative marketing manager for 509, David McKinney. So it's an excellent episode. He is responsible for a lot of the media, a lot of the content that comes out of 509. But also, he is the one that makes decisions around sponsorship. So you're going to definitely want to tune into that, because you get to hear his thoughts on the topic. And in case you missed our last episode, we had Iron Woman Kristen Matlock on. Now, this episode is brought to you by 5 awesome companies. SolderWeld, they produce game-changing metal bonding technology. TopThePodium.com, they're experts in motorsports sponsorship. Bold Racing and Suspension, they're family race team and custom suspension experts. Armor Kote, they simplify your cleaning process. And then Crash Addict Industries, they provide human protection and extreme racing products. I also want to give a quick shout out to some of our other partners, including MBRP, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, GSP XTV Axles, and One Stop Performance. Now, the structure of this podcast is set up like a race. We'll begin with the qualifier, which is a basic intro. In Heat 1, we'll dive into Lorin's background. In Heat 2, we'll talk about sponsorship tactics and strategies. And then, usually we cover a main event, which is mindset, but we basically skipped that because we just got so involved in the other aspects of the podcast, so we skipped the main event this time. And then we'll head over to the finish line, and we're going to close things out. Without further ado, let's hop in. All right, well, welcome everybody to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by AMSOIL. And today we have our featured guest, Lorin Morrell. Actually, I don't even know how to say your last name. Morrell?
Morrell.
Morrell. All right. I thought it was
Yes.
fancy like that. Morrell, that's boring. Morrell, that is fancy. Lorin Morrell of Maddog Media Marketing. So, Lorin, I'd love you to take a minute, fill in the gaps for the intro, and then tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thanks, Josh. I appreciate that. Appreciate you having me on the show. I basically do event management and representation. I do some social media for companies. I do a lot of work with SSV Works, great group of guys, do off-road audio. Do a lot of work for Buggy Whips, who's, just crazy good company, crazy good product. I do some work with my good friend Dave from Fullerton Sand Sports, help him out. And then in my spare time, I co-promote the UTV Invasion in Idaho Dunes over Labor Day weekend.
Nice. I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, that's I'm full of surprises. That's actually what it's interesting because it's the opposite side of doing events. So all of a sudden I'm not the vendor or the representative. I'm the guy on the other end. And it actually really helps because you see both sides of the coin, and it helps you get a good picture of both.
Yeah, definitely. And you also, we talked a little bit about this in the pre-interview, but you had a plug that you wanted to give for an organization you're working with. So go ahead and take a minute and tell us about that.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to the Road to Recovery. They're a fantastic group. Primarily, they help out off-roaders that have been injured. They do things like help out with the bills, help out negotiating with doctors. As you well know, insurance for especially extreme athletes doesn't always cover everything, and they're quick to jump in and help people. I just did a project with Rotation Motorsports doing a razor that Polaris had donated and for Road to Recovery, and we're building it in the theme of Kote who I'm sure you're very familiar with. And he's back actually racing last weekend, I believe, or weekend before. He was back in a side-by-side racing, but he got injured at the X Games.
Yeah.
And so Road to Recovery jumped in to help cover gaps and negotiate with doctors and et cetera like that and get him the care he needed to get back. And they do that for everybody. They're doing that right now, with Smagical. Smaggy. So, they're involved in helping him and multiple athletes that have been injured. They're just right there to jump in. So I helped do this build on a Polaris Razor that they're going to raffle. And if you hit their website at roadtorecovery.com, you can buy a chance to win for $5.
Nice.
And it's fully built. I mean, cage, audio, seats, harnesses. I mean, there's just a huge group of great companies that came together to supply product for this and, help Road to Recovery help more people. So that's, I wanted to give a shout out to them. It's close to my heart, and having been involved, I want to make sure that everybody knows, get out there and get a ticket.
That's perfect. Do you know when the raffle ends?
I believe it will end in December.
Okay. Oh, so we got some time.
Oh, yeah. It'll either end at the end of October at Camp Razor or December. I honestly am not 100% sure on that.
Well, if people are listening to this show right now, and just so you know, we're recording this on June 28th of 2018, and that would mean that this is going to be lasting at least until the end of this year, or at least pretty close to it. So odds are pretty high. If you're listening to it, you got an opportunity still to go check it out. And if not, if for whatever reason it's 2019 and it's gone, go check them out anyways, because it sounds like a pretty awesome organization.
Yeah, they're fantastic, and they help a lot of athletes in need, and that's one of the things about our chosen industry, or the industry that chose us, however you want to put it.
Right.
Is it's a huge industry, but a small family.
Yep.
We all support each other and want to help each other, and when we have one down, we want to help them get back up.
Definitely. Well, that's good. I appreciate you taking the time to share that as well. I'm sure that Road to Recovery
Absolutely.
appreciates it too.
Yeah, and thank you for letting me put that little plug in there.
Definitely. Well, what I want to do next, though, is dive a little bit more into your background. You're involved with a lot of awesome companies, and from the marketing side of the world, I mean, you're there, you're in it, you're in the social media, and you're in motorsports. So that's a perfect fit for this show, because that's one of the things that we need to better understand as riders and racers who are also trying to keep our sponsors happy. We need to know how to market ourselves. We need to know how to drive more value for our sponsors. A lot of times that does come through social media. A lot of times it comes through events and promotions. So very excited to talk more about that. But I want to know next your story. I want to know how you got into motorsports, and I want to know the path that you took to get from that point to where you're at today.
Boy, it was uphill and crooked, I can tell you that. Basically, I kind of grew up in motorsports. My dad was a missionary in Alaska, and prior to that, he was raised in Southern California during the hot rod era, and he was a motorhead that was passed down from his dad, who actually used to race. He had a Star Coupe in the 30s that he used to race in what they used to be an area called the Great Sand Dunes in Colorado.
Okay.
So it's almost a genetic thing. Yeah. I wouldn't call it a curse, but my dad got involved in snowmobile racing, and he got transferred from Alaska to northern Canada, and he got involved in snowmobile racing and had some great success. And actually in 72, he got picked up by then Bombardier, or Bombardier, as you would say in Canada. Yeah. And as a factory racer. He was a cross-country racer. Right. And so he did very well with that. He also worked with a friend of his that had it'd be a vintage racer now, but it was a vintage racer then, actually. I think it was a 33 or 34 Ford dirt track car at the local speedway. And so I spent a lot of time at the local dirt track in Whitehorse, Yukon Territory, Canada. And, my entire life was all around motorsports, making things go faster. My brothers had a little Keystone mini bike, and they blew the motor up on it, so they put a Briggs & Stratton on it with, I think they used washing machine pulleys and belt, and it was direct drive, and both of them, one's 6 years older, one's 8 years older, and both of them were a little afraid to get on it, so they put me on it at, probably 6 or 7 years old, and got it started and dropped it, and we lived on a gravel road, and I think that was probably the first time I exceeded 50 miles an hour on two wheels. Oh, I bet. It never scared me. Well, I got the bug. I started riding motorcycle. I went and bought a motorcycle and started riding, and started racing a little bit with limited success. And as I got a little older, I got more involved in street stuff, road racing, and I was involved with a local Kawasaki dealer in British Columbia, and did a little bit of road racing there. Again, with limited results. As it turns out, my brain was much smaller than other parts of my body. And so it was one of those things, it's like, you had to be smart and good, and I wasn't smart at all. So
That's
it was
awesome.
a little hard on equipment.
Yeah.
So, I built a street bike when I was 17. I guess I took a old Kawasaki KZ 650 and completely went through it, and it made stupid power back then for what it was.
Yeah.
And I ended up, I think I still hold the record for a 65-mile stretch of the Alaska Highway on gravel, where I averaged over 60 miles an hour for 65 miles.
Wow.
In gravel.
Yeah.
So, like I said, my brain's not that big.
Oh, that's awesome.
But that's kind of where it all started, and when I moved back to the States in the late 80s, I got involved with a circle track speedway team, or I guess it wouldn't be speedway per se. Circle track team. We ran on banked ovals in the Pacific Northwest, and I started building cars and chassis and motors and crew chiefing a team, and we had everything from, at one point, we had 5 cars in the family.
Okay.
And we had a daughter, a dad, a mom, and 2 cousins that all raced.
Mm.
And they raced everything from $500 claimer cars to 10-inch slick super stocks with 5 lengths and weight jacks. And so I did that for about 10 years. And we had good success, we won some races. We won a lot of trophy dashes. We never won a championship we did when we entered into super stock the first year. We set the record for the oldest rookie of the year ever at the
nice.
local speedway. He was 51.
Yeah.
Car was fast, and he could drive.
Yeah.
So that I went from there to karting. Had a friend that decided he wanted to start go-karting, just out of the blue, and I was like, well, sure. And he actually recruited a sponsor from, and this is where things get involved. I always tried to recruit sponsors back in those days, but you're a small track. This guy recruited Progressive Custom Wheels, and they dumped a lot of money into the program. We gave them a lot of results. We won a championship the first year. And we traveled every weekend to make sure that they were getting the exposure. We'd set up a small display, and threw it down big, so that they felt like they were getting their value. And we got to race, so it's kind of a cool deal. And then, doing all that, we did some more circle track racing. I was involved in the automotive industry as a parts and service director. And I got involved as a turnaround guy with Ford Motor Company. And I did 4 dealerships in 11 years. Got turned around, won a couple of President's Awards, but I started Maddog I don't even know, I've been to Maddog since I was 13 years old. So, but as far as the motorsports side of it, I really started getting back involved in 2007, very deeply. I was doing some product testing for Rob Muzzy, some off-road product testing that turned into basically he hired me full time to do all his events, all his shows, do all his social media, and I also managed the entire race program. So at one point, I had more than 40 off-road race teams at one level or another of sponsorship.
Wow.
And from there, he retired and shut the business down in 15, and I just kind of went out on my own and took a chance and had a little faith and kind of, my wife gave me a big shove out the door and said, I got your back. She said, I got your back, and go do what you want to do. So, I've been doing the Maddog media marketing stuff only for since the beginning of 2016 now.
Yep. I just want to comment real quick on, your wife and her support. It's important for anybody listening right now to have that support structure in place. If you don't have somebody externally that's supporting you, then you're just going to have to dive deeper internally to find that drive. But it's very helpful when you have somebody behind you, especially somebody who depends on you that says, just go do it. I got you. It's fine.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, without her support and her unconditional support, I wouldn't be where I am right now. I wouldn't be talking to you right now, for sure, without a doubt.
Definitely.
And it's critical, It's I did a little bit of racing here and there, and then I tore up a knee, and her and I had an agreement that I was going to retire that year, and I had just started in and retire from racing. I'm not that old.
Yeah.
And I had planned on, okay, well, I'm going to get this season in, and I'm really going to put a really hard push. I was riding a quad then. And I actually tore up a knee in a non-automotive, non-off-road, non-fun situation, just a dumb thing. And I had 4 arthroscopic procedures in 8 months. And of course, I hung it up. I'd given her my word that I would hang it up that year at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to compete, and so it was like, you know what? I gave you my word, so here we are.
Right.
But that's another thing. Like you said, the support is so critical, and whether you're a racer, whether you're a sponsor, if you're trying to make a go in this industry, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You're going to have some down times.
Right. Right.
And if you don't, like you said, if you don't have those people, you need to look deep, and dig deep and find ways to, think about the last time you rode that puts a smile on your face or something like that, and just push through and in my situation, I wish I had as much faith in myself as she has in me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so
that's good stuff, man. I think it's very helpful to know that background, and it's very interesting. I did not know you were in all those different types of racing, and it's always fun to hear that it's a generational thing, right? Your dad was big into this stuff, especially cool stuff, right? Like racing a 32, 33 Ford, that's awesome. And cross-country snowmobile racing, that's one of the ways into my heart. So that's awesome here. What about today, though? I mean, you've been doing the Maddog thing for a couple of years now, and you're everywhere. I see you all over the place. But what's something that you're really fired up about right now?
Man, I literally just got back at like 1:00 this afternoon. I was doing an event for SSV Works. We work with Kicker, and Kicker puts on a country stampede every year in Kansas, and so that was my latest. I was in Kansas last week. Let me see, Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, Monday through Sunday,
Okay.
I guess. Or Tuesday through Sunday, something. They all blend together.
Yeah.
But that was, that's always a highlight. I really enjoy it. It's basically, a 3-day country festival. You're there representing the brands. SSV Works has a couple of really cool vehicles that we had there. A Polaris General that's got like 13 inches of total lift on it. And,
Nice.
insane, and a new Ranger. And so that's the most recent. That was a lot of fun. A lot of the stuff I'm fired up on now is like getting things handled for UTV Invasion, getting things ready for the fall. I absolutely love, even though I don't sponsor race teams anymore, really. I support a couple of riders, but, I don't have a budget I used to have, right? So, but I'm very involved in following it, and I have I've made a lot of friends, especially in the side-by-side industry, that are all racing. And so, following them and staying up with the industry. And I mean, it's so exciting because off-road in general is growing. So I've got some other stuff I'm working on, that I hope will come to light, but I don't want to curse myself, by talking about it. And I'm working on, some stuff as far as maybe some Maddog branded apparel, some stuff like that. I mean, we're in process of getting a website built, so I can better market myself. So it's just exciting, it's every day is an adventure. And it's just a matter of, for me, I like to work. So, the harder I work, sometimes it does pay off, sometimes it doesn't pay off, but I guarantee you when I'm in the ground, nobody's going to say, man, that guy was a lazy SOB,
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, what I want to do next is talk about the sponsorship tactics, the strategies. That's kind of the meat of the show. That's what we're really here for. First, though, I need to take a minute to thank the sponsors for this podcast. Have you ever been out on the trail or at the track or in the middle of the desert and something breaks? Well, of course you have. We've all been there. But a lot of people at that point, they reach into their trusty toolbox for the duct tape or the zip ties or wrenches to fix their machine. However, there's a feeling that you get when you realize you need more than just duct tape to fix that rock chip in your radiator. That's a horrible, horrible feeling to have. And that's why I'm going to tell you next about SolderWeld's metal bonding products, specifically AMSOIL. So this product gives you a longer-term fix than JB Weld, which is just going to get you back to the trailer or back to the pits. With basically the assistance of MAP gas or propane torch, you can quickly and easily repair an oil cooler, radiator, AC line, or any crack or hole in aluminum. And better yet, AMSOIL Flux is the only flux in industry that cleans and decontaminates the dirty and greasy surface for you. So you don't even have to worry about that part. The AMSOIL rods are actually capable of a 30,000 PSI fix, and they're stronger than even the parent metal, and they're built to last the lifetime of the part. So don't let a simple radiator leak leave you out of the race or broken down in the trail. Bring along some AMSOIL aluminum alloy repair rod and flux from SolderWeld. I don't know about you, but I absolutely can't stand cleaning the mud, filth, grime, goo, garbage off my machines after I go for a ride. It's just frustrating. It takes a lot of time. That's why I'm going to talk to you about Armor Kote next. Armor Kote is designed to help prevent mud, clay, ice, and other grime from sticking to your machine. It makes the cleanup quick and easy. It makes the machine actually look fantastic, and beyond that, it smells phenomenal. I don't know how to describe it, like bubble gum or something like that. It smells great. If you want to know more about Armor Coat, visit armorcoatproducts.com and you will see their entire product line, all the offerings. Armor Coat is also working on some new stuff. They're soon going to release a solution made for coating the helmet and visor, and also one for wheels to help prevent mud buildup for high temp areas. So make your move now. Go to armorcoatproducts.com. Make a decision that's going to allow you to shorten the amount of time that you spend cleaning so that you can increase the amount of time that you spend riding and racing. I hear it constantly from racers that a good suspension setup is absolutely critical for performance, and that's why I'm going to talk to you next about Bold Racing and suspension. Now, it's really critical to understand your suspension, and there's so many intricacies with the valving and the shims and all this crazy equipment that you need to actually, rebuild and properly set up your suspension, that it's really important, if you're ready for that next level of performance, to partner with an awesome suspension company. Now, Bold Racing is that company. They're not only specialists with their suspension setups, but they also partner with companies that produce amazing custom components. And on top of that, they're a family race team. They actually race themselves, so they really understand the type of beating that your vehicle and your shocks can take. So what I want you to do is give them a call and just chat with them. Talk to them about suspension. Their number is 702-506-5354. If you're not ready for a phone call, go ahead and shoot them an email, bold.racing@yahoo.com. I am constantly asking the guests of this podcast how they attract and retain sponsors. And on almost every single occasion, somebody gives an example of a resume. A rider or a racer resume is extremely important to your overall sponsorship pitch and proposal. And it's tough to do. I mean, it's not really the easiest thing. Anybody can go through and put together a resume, so don't get me wrong there, but it's really difficult to get something that's like unique and different and stands out, and that also is something that can be put across multiple platforms. Well, that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about next, is how topthepodium.com can actually help you build a race or rider resume that can be used on multiple platforms. I'm talking like website, PDF, something you can print off that's interactive, that looks fantastic. It looks absolutely professional. Well, that's because it's made by a professional. This is the type of thing that's going to set you apart from the crowd, and that's going to position you for a strong sponsorship proposal. So what I want you to do next is go to topthepodium.com, and if you have a question, there's a little chat icon that pops up on the side of the screen when you go to topthepodium.com, and you can go ahead and type your question right there. Jeff Vanestal, he is the owner of Top the Podium. He's going to be able to respond to you directly, so check it out. Safety is our overriding priority. I hear it all the time, but I have to ask myself, is it though? Is that the first thing we think of? Is that the first thing you think of? Over the past couple of years, we've seen the performance of production UTVs increase, somewhere around 350%. That means these machines give us a lot more opportunity to have fun and win races, but it also, unfortunately, gives us new opportunities to crash. And that's why we have partnered with Crash Addict Industries. The owner, Travis Pointer, became very accustomed to crashing early in his career. He saw it as inevitable, and he set out to make the process safer. With a passion for racing, welding, and engineering, Crash Addict Industries now produces full cage and other protection systems intentionally designed to protect you during an accident on the track. They also offer a line of human protection products through their vendors. Do this for me at this point. If you're racing with a stock cage right now, please go check out crashaddict.com and at least just see what they have to offer. Even if you choose to go with a different company, please make safety your overriding priority. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are now in Heat 2. That's where all the good, fun stuff is at. Heat 1, for people who are listening, I want people to know the person behind the microphone a little bit better. I want them to know their background, the things that they've experienced. I I want you to start building a relationship with them. That's what Heat 1 is all about, building that relationship. Heat 2 is like, all right, now we got to talk about some of the details, getting the nitty-gritty stuff, and hopefully, now that you know a little bit more about Lorin, you understand why I want you to listen to him. Like, that's basically what Heat 1 is all about. I don't know if I've ever really explained that to anybody, why I do it the way I do it, but there it is. It's out there. But in this one, I kind of want to start off with relationship building. So I just talked about that, right? In Heat 1, we're starting to build that relationship. I want you to give us some examples now of how you've done that with a business or a racer or both. So maybe just walk us through that.
Well, let me tell you, as a business, in the motorsports industry in general, the number one rule is visibility as far as I'm concerned. Image. You need to be out there in front of people to be fresh in their minds. And, I'm sure that transfers over to other things, but for what I know, that's the kind of thing that is really important. And it's no different, I think, for an athlete, the exposure, being out there, being in front of people, being in the public eye, let's not use that word. How about being a nice person, being personable, interacting with your fans. Sponsors look at all that stuff, and I told you in Heat 1, I managed multiple race teams at multiple levels of sponsorship when I was with Muzzies, from literally road racing to freestyle to drag racing to off-road racing, and side-by-sides and UTVs. And I'm guilty. You can ask anybody I've had this sponsorship discussion with, and they will tell you one of my principles is I will take a guy who's a top 10 guy or girl that is a good person that everybody likes, that has great visibility, over a guy that's on the number one spot on the podium every weekend that nobody likes, that's mean to everybody, that's not personable or not approachable. I never want to associate myself with those people. So, and ultimately, it's generally when I was making sponsorship decisions, it's generally not a board making the decision on whether they're going to sponsor you or not. It generally comes down to one person and what they feel and what they think. And like it or not, I think that's the way it is in most cases. On my side, when I was doing a lot of racing, it's, there's two things: hustle and follow through. But follow through falls into the hustle. You have to hustle on the follow through too. It doesn't do you any good to get a good, deck. So you put this super fancy deck together. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. And the sponsor goes, okay, let's cut a deal and let's start here and see how it goes. And then you don't follow through with anything. They're 90% of the time, they're not calling you back.
Right.
That's my experience. If I have people that say, hey, I can do this and I can do that and I can do that, one, I'd look at their history, and this goes to social media, going back to that discussion we had actually before we got on the air, sorry. So I will look at someone's social media, I would, and that would help me make a decision. What kind of person are they? Is this somebody that I want representing my livelihood?
Two things I want to pull out of that real quick is one, what you just said around it's not a board making this decision. That's something we have talked about in the show before, and I just want to keep reinforcing it, that there's a human being sitting behind the email or the phone call or whatever it is. There's a human being that's processing that pitch, processing that information, and making a decision. And they're human just like you and me. They're coming into a job. They're maybe they own the company, but either way, like they're a human. So you got to remember that they're real people. I hear this a lot where someone will say, "Oh yeah, I'm just gonna use Polaris." Like nobody's ever really said this about Polaris to me, but "Oh, Polaris turned me down on my offer." It's like, well, no, there's probably one person at Polaris that turned you down on your offer. Or like, I worked with such and such for 10 years. Like, well, how many people there? Well, there's like only 2 people that I worked with over the course of 10 years. Like, oh, that's pretty cool. But there's people that are sitting behind these businesses. It's not just like the entirety of Polaris or the entirety of Monster Energy, that you're working with. It's 1 or 2 people primarily.
Absolutely correct. And the other thing to remember when you're seeking sponsorship is that one person is probably wearing much more than a sponsorship hat.
Yes. Yep.
They're probably doing, in my case, I did R&D, I developed fuel management systems. I backed up the sales staff when they weren't there. I even filled in for the general manager when he was on vacation. So, there's take that into consideration. I sent a resume, and there's nothing worse than getting an email with a resume, and I would process them. I had a way that I went through them, and somebody would send you one, and perhaps it's overly gaudy to begin with, or overly thick, if you will, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, I'll get a look at it. And the next day you get an email. Hey, I sent you a sponsorship request. I haven't heard back from you. And the day after that, you get an email. And the day after that. And I will tell you, one thing you'll find out with me is the bottom line is what you're going to get. And I will tell you, the more days in a row you harass me, the further down the pile it goes.
Oh man, it's so true. So I gotta share a story. I've been in the manufacturing and now I'm in R&D industry, but I've been in like management now for a little while in the corporate world. And one of the things that I get hit up on a lot of times is one, recruiters, whether they're trying to get people onto my team or recruit people off, or recruit me or someone else off my team. It's incredible. And they'll do that like, hey, did you see my last email? Or, hey, just checking in, haven't heard back from me yet. And it's this diatribe of like this just, dissertation that they've written on what key positions they're trying to recruit for, or how their recruiting agency is like 100 times better than the other recruiting agency that just sent me a message today previously. And that's not my primary job. Just like this in sponsorship, that's not the only thing that I am there to do. That's just something that I need to do. And it's overwhelming and it's frustrating, and it's like I can't even process this. I actually reached out to somebody the other day. This was a recruiter for me, and I was actually a little rude. Now I almost feel bad about it now. But They hit me up. There's like 3 people that were sending me text messages, which I think text is a little intrusive unless I've given you that permission. And
yes.
They were asking me to come do a position that was like nowhere near anything that like they shouldn't be reaching out to me. I'm not even remotely close to the right target market. And I responded back like, you need to reconsider your entire recruiting strategy with like, I'm in the wrong target. This is a very intrusive message. I don't even know who you are or where my number came from. And I was like, and I told your friend, I don't know who it was, they had their name listed in there. I was like, I told your friend Lori the same thing. So please change your practices right away. But I don't know. It's just you got to think about that too, and especially a lot of people who are sponsored riders and racers. They have day jobs as well. So think about those little annoying things that come in that like just pester you. And
Yes.
like try to improve that experience. I don't know how to do it. If I knew how to do it, we wouldn't have to talk about this for an hour every single week, right? It's not like I can give you that answer right now, but just think about that.
Yeah, and that goes back to there's a human on the other end of that email or that phone call or that voicemail or whatever, you know. Do you want to be bothered every day? No.
Right.
Do you think they want to be bothered every day? No. You know, so I mean, it's kind of harsh, but if you want to be a sponsored athlete, you need to think like a sponsored athlete and act like a sponsored athlete. And the sponsored athletes that I work with, as far as especially and specifically because my primary was side-by-sides, UTV guys, and girls. There was things I required of them that I expected to get, but I didn't need to know what they had for breakfast race day.
Yeah.
You know, until I got the race report, if it was part of it. But I did need the race report within 5 days after the close of a race. You know, and in my situation, I'm perhaps a little unusual, but I had certain racers that I worked with that I allowed to call me. I shouldn't say allowed because that sounds really pretentious. It wasn't it did.
I permitted.
That sounded. Yeah, that sounded horrible. Man, I'm a jerk. No, as opposed to having them, I knew they had jobs. I knew they had day jobs and kids and wives, and they were giving it their all to be at the track and represent me and do a good job. So I said, hey, give me a call every Tuesday after a race at 10 a.m., call me and hit me up with a download of your weekend, and I'll put something together and get it on our website, get it on our social media, and get it up. Then all you have to do is send me some text pictures, and I'll make it happen. So, you know, that wasn't everybody. Keep in mind,
right?
But there were some people that I knew their situation, and the other side of that is I was protecting my investment because I knew if I waited for them, I could be waiting a long time, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, things happen. I understand that, but I tried to work with some of my people the way that just try and find a way for both of us to make it work.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you know, we talked a lot about really great things that have happened, but it sounds like with all the interactions that you've had, there's probably a couple of them that didn't go as planned. You know, we don't have to get into who that is or any specific company names, but, you know, I would love it if you had an example you could share with us of a time that things didn't go well and ultimately help us understand what we could learn from that scenario.
Sure, absolutely. Actually, I want to do a positive situation first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do it.
So it's one of those things. How do you get sponsorship? How do you find sponsorship? I know that's what your focus is, and I'll tell you, there's in the off-road side. I love this story. So we all know who the Guthries are. I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Fantastic family. So when I was with Muzzies, Guthrie's were, Mitch Guthrie at that time was like 4-time King of the Hammers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Long history. Mitchie was really starting to come along strong in works and some other stuff. And I was a fan. Not gonna lie, I was a fan. I didn't sponsor him, but I was a fan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm standing in the coffee line at Sandsports Super Show, waiting to get to, I can't remember, Grandma's Coffee or whatever it is. And I turn around and made a comment to the people behind me, and a man and his wife and their son, and we kind of laughed and we started talking, and then he introduced himself as Mitch Guthrie, and I'm like, I'm well aware as who you are. He introduced the family, and I introduced myself, and I said, well, I'd love to talk to you more sometime. I got to get back to my booth. And so he's like, oh, yeah, here's my number. I'm like, oh, cool. So then I'm looking at, I go back to the office, and I'm like, hey, if you don't ask the question, the answer is always no. So
Right.
I'm gonna give him a call and say, hey, I'm interested in sponsoring you. Would you be interested in working with me? That call turned into an incredible relationship that landed King of the Hammers wins and multiple championships and multiple wins. And to this day, they're still some of my best friends in the industry. And it was because I turned around and said hi, because I was standing in line for coffee. But two, because of their, if Mitch would have been an ass, I probably wouldn't have thought twice about trying to recruit him, right?
Right.
I mean, I hate to use that kind of word, but it's pretty. It's pretty light. It's PG.
It's pretty light. I'll let it fly.
Yeah. So that's one of my favorite positive stories.
Yeah. Well, I want to build on that real quick because first off, you were there. So you were at the Sandsport Super Show, and you didn't have to be.
Yep.
You could have been at home, or you could have been somewhere else. So you made the decision to go there because that's where some of the key influencers were at. So that's one piece. But two is that you were knowledgeable enough already that you knew who it was, right? You knew that the family, you had been a fan already. So you turned around, you knew who it was, but you still said, I'm gonna have this conversation, and you did that. So I think that there's always like these unnoticeable activities that happen prior to you making these connections. We call it luck, right? Good luck. But
right.
I call it, when opportunity meets hard work. And, in this case, that's what happened. But there's all these other things that happened before that got you in that exact position.
Absolutely. It's like my dad says, and he's a retired preacher / missionary. He says, miracles do happen, but I guarantee you someone somewhere is putting in the legwork for it to happen.
Right. That's a very good point. I like that.
So, yeah, for sure. So that's one of my, that family is still so close to me. We are literally family. So it's just one of those things, and it's an example to every racer. Anybody that's looking for sponsorship, you could be standing in line, and the person that turns around and makes a smart-ass comment could be your next big sponsor.
Right.
Right. And how you deal with that kind of stuff and how you handle your public image makes all the difference in the world. So,
right.
On the other side of that, I inherited a gentleman that we sponsored, and they had been giving him a really, really sweet deal. And when I took over, it's kind of like when it's got you. Have you worked somewhere where you get a new boss?
Oh yeah, yep,
And you know how it's like, yeah, so this policy's changing, this is changing, this is changing, and everybody's like, oh my goodness, you know.
yeah,
So I was used to that with all my years at Ford. Everybody hated me because I went in and made changes. So,
yeah,
but I started looking at this gentleman's social media, and I'm like, what? No,
yeah,
no, no. And then I started looking at race results and whatnot. And so basically I changed the program. And when his program expired, which was like November, in December, I sent out a sponsorship renewal, but the program had changed from a super sweet ride to a semi-sweet ride. I mean, there were still incentives. And as good as some other people that were better representatives were getting. The response to that was, well, this isn't my program.
right,
And I responded back, well, that is the program I'm offering you based on last year's performance.
right,
I basically got told to F off.
yeah,
I don't need you. Okay. That's fine. There's no need to take it personal and no need to dish it out personal.
right.
It's a business decision. Ultimately, it is a business decision.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You know, so that's one of the too bads, and that goes back to follow through and hustle.
Yeah,
The other one that took probably hurt my feelings the worst, if you will.
yeah.
I do have feelings, believe it or not. I have one. So it hurt my feeler. But I had a guy that I supported, another one I inherited, but he was a good representative, a very good racer. And I supported him immensely for 2 years. And at the end of the second year, his program, I mean, he was good enough that his program was going. I had basically several different levels. And the top level is basically, free ride program. It's kind of like,
right,
sit down and make this happen. And he was up for that. And he quit answering emails, didn't answer his phone. And then, so I'm holding out, and about 3 days before the desert season started, I finally got a hold of him. And he said, oh, well, yeah, I've been meaning to call you. I'm going with someone else.
yeah, yep.
And I'll tell you, that hurt me personally.
Yeah.
And that goes back to, remember, it's not a board on the other end of that sponsorship line.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I would never treat someone that way. And so, it's something to think about. If you're sponsored by somebody, sponsored rider out there, if you're sponsored by somebody and you haven't done your job, don't expect them to just hand you whatever you had last year.
Right.
The other side of that, if they haven't done their job, bring it to their attention, but certainly don't smash them. And if you are going to go somewhere else, if you have developed a relationship, especially, at least have the common respect to call them or pop them an email and say, hey, I'm going somewhere else.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that's a good point, and honestly, it just reinforces that whole human element thing. I mean, that's what you said. There's someone behind that. Your feelings were hurt, right?
Yeah.
We don't like to admit it, especially that the population of people that listen to this podcast. We don't want to admit that we got feelings, but guess what? They're there, and
They're
and we make decisions based off of feelings. So I'm actually reading a book right now. It's all about that. As much as we hate to admit it, our emotions do make the decisions for us, and we can get into that in another show. But you gotta think about that. You gotta think about what that feels like for the other person. Whether it's like you said, it's business. It's a business decision, so that's fine if a rider decides to go another way. But just remember how you would feel if you were in the receiving end of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I just kind of went through a situation like that recently. And someone I'd worked with for years, and he called me and said, "Hey,
Yeah.
I've got this on the table, and it's really, really, we're really good friends, and we've worked together for a long time. But I know there's no way that you can currently match this."
Mm-hmm.
And, I said, "Hey, man, you're absolutely right, and business is business. I certainly can't fault you for making a smart business decision for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it bums me out, but the other side of that is it will never, ever affect our friendship."
Right.
Now, had I not got that call and found out through Instagram or,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, it might have affected our friendship. I'm not going to lie.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, the relationships are so important, especially when you're representing a company, because the person that made the decision to sponsor you probably has a lot of pride in their company and what they do. And developing a relationship with them and encouraging each other will only build the sponsorship and the entire brand, or the brand as an entirety, together better, I think.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
No, I think that does, definitely. Well, one thing that I do want to dive into next is something that you obviously spend a lot of time on, is social media. And, I want to better understand from your perspective, what role does that really play in the sponsorship business? I mean, you've already referenced it several times just in this quick conversation. We talk about it in every show too, so obviously it's a big deal, but I want to understand from your perspective what role that plays, and if you have any tips to share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's huge. If you've been on social media for any amount of time, I will 99% guarantee you that the person you're trying to get to sponsor you is checking out your personal page.
Mm-hmm.
Be it Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever all the rest of them are. Those are the three I deal with.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't deal a lot with Twitter because I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
But that's number one, is what kind of person are you on social media? Because they're going to look at that, and it's going to influence their decision. I can tell you for a fact. Number two, how do you promote your sponsors, your current sponsors? Do you have a current sponsor that you had a problem with their product and you said, well, I DNF because so-and-so's product let me down, and show a picture of a broken piece or, something like that. If you do something like that, I'm not going to sign you. Bottom line, because there's a certain amount of that kind of stuff that needs to be between the sponsor and the athlete.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, you have to remember that a lot of companies, I don't know if how many companies, but I know a lot of companies use their sponsored athletes as test beds, if you will.
Yes.
They've already. I mean, I've already developed this product. I've tested it extensively. I think it's good. Let's put it on your race car and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so to go, well, this product is a piece of crap, publicly is not. It's not beneficial to the relationship. How's that?
Right.
Right. But social media is huge, and then how you promote yourself and how you promote your sponsors, like how do you tag your sponsors in every post? Do you occasionally remember to tag your sponsors? That used to drive me crazy. It's like, dude, I talked to you yesterday. Oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
And I really, as a sponsor, I shouldn't have had to police that.
Right.
But you do, and they will. The ones that are really intense and care about the image and what they're getting and what you're doing for them will look at all that stuff. I love to see someone tag all their sponsors, even if, let's say, they're posting a picture of their wheel and tire combination. Tag all your sponsors.
Yeah.
Because it helps all your sponsors coagulate, if you will. And pretty soon, your post for this company is getting picked up by that company. Say your post for your tire and wheel is getting picked up and shared by your safety equipment company. And that builds your exposure, that builds their exposure. And any sponsor who's not paying attention to where they're being tagged and who else is being tagged in the post should really look at what's going on. Take a few minutes and pay attention to it, because you can't be tunnel visioned. It's like, okay, I'm this guy's only sponsor. Well, no, you're not. And one thing I used to do was, when I was promoting my racers, I would tag all their sponsors in my post as a sponsor.
Yes.
But, but it got to a point where all those people's sponsors are like, I see them in the event. Dude, that was a great post. Thank you so much. I shared it. I got this many likes on it, or whatever. And you start, it's a snowball, right? People start picking up on it. Your engagement starts growing. So all of a sudden, your sponsors are working together to promote you as well. It's, you see what I'm saying? So all of a sudden, you're getting way more exposure, and your sponsors are going, oh, this guy's great because he does all this. And it's not just you. You all of a sudden you got them promoting you and still hooking you up to promote them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something that we've seen with this show too. I've been very fortunate with this show to have great support from businesses, and some of them for a very long time. But I've noticed that some of the athletes that I interface with more, some of the folks that have been on the show, you'll see them having some of the same sponsors. So, for example, George Hamill, he's sponsored by Armor Kote and also SolderWeld, which they both sponsor the show, and they have for quite some time now. And it's just interesting seeing those. Like, at one point, none of us were sponsored by those two, and then now both of us are. And same with Desert Vets Racing, Mike Pasquarella. I talked about this not too long ago, but he's sponsored by SolderWeld and also MBRP, which helps the show out. Both of them help the show, and that wasn't the case, a year ago. But we talk to each other. We spend a lot of time together. I follow them, they follow me. Our content gets shared. It made sense at that point where those companies would support all of us, and it's pretty interesting how that stuff happens.
Oh, certainly, and there's so much involved in that aspect. I mean, that could be a whole nother show.
Yeah.
About networking and the importance of networking and hooking people up with other people. And I do a fair amount of that now, actually, for several racers that are like, hey, I had one just this year call me and ask me if I could spend some time with him and kind of teach him, introduce him to some people and kind of teach him just how to meet other people in the industry. And I'm like, I'm really honored. I'm like, are you sure you want me to do that?
Yeah.
But that whole networking thing is above, beyond, outside a complete surround of the sponsored thing,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'll give another example of that just in the podcast world, which there's actually some similarities. The more I've done the show, the more I've seen similarities between just running a content business or running a sales organization or whatever. There's some similarities in networking. And Jim Beaver, for example. So Jim Beaver, he has his own radio show and his own podcast, and honestly, that show would technically we're competitors, right? We are both on iTunes. If you scroll through automotive podcasts, we're both in that same segment, so we're technically competing for the same ears. But Jim came on my show episode 4. He came on episode 50, and I have probably a monthly call with him just to kind of check in, and he gives me little tips for how to do things. And he didn't have to do that. Why would he need to do that? He just does it. And he's given me a ton of other connections, and hopefully I've helped him as well. Like I feel like I promote Jim Beaver quite a bit because why wouldn't I? He's very helpful to me. In another one, Jake Coleman. So Jake Coleman was the last straw that finally got me to bring you on this show. Jake Coleman, people don't know up top is just hearing his name. He hosts the Dirty Dooner podcast, and we are both in the automotive sector as well. So we're technically competitors, but I mean, we're going back and forth all the time on little things like, hey, I'm having trouble with my sound, or like, how do I download this audio file and convert it? And, we just hung out together last weekend at the Silver Lake Sand Dunes in Michigan. And, he was like, oh, you need to get Lorin on the show. And it's pretty, so now we're talking, right? And I don't know what 6 months from now, I don't know what this is going to mean for a new connection that I have in the future.
Certainly, absolutely, and I follow your show, and I think I touched base with you and was like, hey, you should have Robert Haslam on the show.
That's right.
And
right.
So, I mean, it's that whole networking thing is massive. When you start looking at all the connections, by the way, shout out Jim Beaver. He's an awesome dude.
Yeah, definitely.
He's
definitely.
really cool. And he's been a friend, and I haven't been invited to be on his show, so you're one up on him.
I was actually on his show. I had a 10-minute segment, which was awesome. I forgot about that. Man, that was a good day in my life. But yeah, I just thought about another thing too. So Robert Haslam was actually also on Jake Coleman's Dirty Dooner show.
Yes.
I can't remember if it was before or after he was on mine, but either way, like it's interesting how that stuff happens.
Yeah, I kind of directed that. I've
Yeah.
known him since he was I shouldn't say he is a kid. But I've known him for a long time, and I've been a big supporter of him. And far from a manager or anything else, but I certainly have tried to help him wherever I could as far as networking and hey, have you talked to these guys? Have you talked to these guys? There's a couple of companies that he's with now that I was like, why haven't you talked to these guys? Well, I don't know. I'm like, dude, send them an email. Send them an Instagram message. You're a good guy with good values and a good image, and you work your butt off. I cannot imagine anyone would not be proud to sponsor you.
Right.
So, and it's worked out.
Another thing, just for people listening, there's behind the scenes, I don't know, puppeteer sounds bad, but like you'll get the point. There's people puppeteering behind the scenes. There's supporters that you have. There's mentors. There's other folks that make these connections, and you don't even know it. Like in this case, like I didn't know that you were the one that ultimately got him onto Jake's show, and but there's people like that all over the place. And I like to think of myself as that way too. I like to think that I'm pulling little strings here and there to get the people the attention that I think that they deserve. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a matter of, this goes back to relationships and supporting your friends and wanting to, because they're good people, right? And you want to see them succeed. And I'm certainly, I've helped him quite a bit, just as an example. I'm not the guy going, hey, I did this or I did that or I did that. I don't want to be that guy. I'm like, hey, look at Haslam, man. He's the first human being to throw a snow bike backflip in competition, and he does it on the biggest stage in the world, right? I mean, at Winter X. So to me, I'm just like, oh yeah, I know that guy. He's so cool. Has nothing to do with, wanting to be like, I talked him into a job where he had to do a backflip and he didn't know backflips at the time.
Right.
I got him the job, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I hope you can backflip by then. And he goes, well, yeah. I guess I'll have to. And then he went out. It was actually up in Oregon at Doomfest, and it was really windy, and Colton Moore was riding up there. He just got back from Russia, and the quads were really fighting the wind. And Robert went out and busted out, I think, in the freestyle show, like 6 backflips,
wow.
During the show. And everybody just went crazy. Well, 6 or 8 months earlier, he couldn't even do a backflip. I was like, hey, I got you this job. I talked to this dude, and he wants you, but he wants to know if you can do backflips. And he's like, well, I got lots of time. So,
yeah,
stuff like that. I mean, it's awesome. It's a matter of trying to just help your people and support them and make them great. And who cares about the rest of the other part of it? That's not important to me. It's the more important part is to watch people succeed, and see your friends do well. And the other side of that is I sponsored him back in the day, and I got great results. And so it's I wouldn't, it's far from a catch-22. It's a win-win,
Right.
So.
Oh, definitely. Well, this has been a really good show. We've been flying The time
Holy
is flying.
smokes.
I just looked down. I need to pay more attention to time in the future. But what I want to do, what I want to do is actually kind of wrap things up. So I'm going to skip over a few things, and I'm thinking in the future we're going to be able to connect again and follow up with this conversation, because I think we could do this all day, all night. But I kind of want to wrap things up. So, I want to know, for people listening right now, what's the best way that they can connect with you?
Right now, probably the best way to connect with me is through my Instagram at Maddog_media. If you see the green helmet with the Mad Dog head in it, you found the right guy.
That's it.
So I have that. I'm trying to get my Mad Dog Media Facebook up and going again.
Yep.
I'm trying to get back at it. I'm doing some social media for other companies. So it's like, mine is suffering, just straight up. I mean,
yeah. I did lawn care for 12 years, and like when I came home, that was the last thing I want to do was cut my own lawn. Like, it's like, no. Whatever. You cut it, and you're like, it looks kind of bad, but I just can't anymore. I just can't.
Perfect example. Well, and you get so intense on building, supporting building these people's pages or these businesses' pages that it's like, oh yeah, I have my own page to build,
Right.
Right. So you can get a hold of me there, either one of those places, but the Instagram is probably the hot ticket right now. I'm not one of those people that runs an Instagram for business and an Instagram for personal. So Mad Dog Media is me.
Right.
It is who I am. It is what I am. So whether I'm out sailing on the weekend or shotgunning rock stars at a country concert, because I had never seen anybody shotgun a rock star before. Why not? Right?
Yeah.
Stupid human trick Thursday. Or Friday, whatever I can't even remember.
I have no idea.
So there's that, and I will have a website. The website I have shut down because I'm restructuring. So I will have a website, but I do not have that available right now. So.
And if you're listening and you navigate over to the Mad Dog page and you're like, is this really him, or am I actually looking at Orange County Choppers, Paul Tuttle Sr.? Just you're in the right spot.
Right.
You're in the right spot, because that's him. That's Lorin. That's not Paul.
You would not believe how many times I get asked about that.
It's crazy. Like, I'll be honest with you, the very first time I saw a picture of you, I was like, holy cow, it's Paul Tuttle. Like, sweet. I was like, oh wait, is Paul's real name isn't Lorin, is it?
No, sadly, no. I wish I had his biceps, I'll tell you that.
But you don't have his raw anger, at least not from what I can tell.
No, I really don't. It takes work. I do a wicked impression when I'm inspired.
I bet.
But it's hard to harness all that anger and just nonstop,
Yeah, there's a lot there.
There.
Well, if the marketing thing doesn't work out, you can always do a celebrity double thing. I don't know what you do, but you can do that.
Well, I'm hoping this continues to work out. I've been really blessed. I've got great support behind me. I'm hoping to get some just continue to grow and continue to help people grow in their lives and in their careers. And I think, surrounding myself with good people, being around good people and good companies is, obviously a part of it. My grandpappy always said, if you want to be great, surround yourself with great people. And so it's just a matter of, hard work. Don't be afraid of hard work. I actually wrote that down on my notes. But, I have really been truly blessed. Very fortunate, to be in the industry. And I feel, really fortunate and thankful that you have me on your show. It's been an absolute blast. I would love to do another one. Someday I'd love to do the live with you.
I think that's the next one, man. I think that's right when we're done with the recording. I think we're going to start talking about scheduling that.
That sounds good. Yeah, I like having fun.
Good.
So it's, I think as a parting comment for riders and athletes looking for sponsorship, be a person, be personable, work hard, own it. Even if you messed it up, own it. Good or bad, own it. And I think companies will take an interest and take a liking to you. It definitely gives you an advantage, without a doubt. And a lot of guys won't see that part of it. I'm Joe Racer, you own me. Hey, I'm Joe Humble Racer. I just want to represent your company and have a good time and be a good representative for you. Oh, I like that guy, right?
Right.
So
Definitely. Well, Lorin, it's been great. It's tough to close this one out. But we got to move on.
Yes,
we gotta prep for the next episode too. So at this point, I'm gonna close things out and leave you with this: have fun and ride safe.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of the sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by AMSOIL. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of our upcoming guests. We have the creative marketing manager for 509, David McKinney, coming up next. He actually makes decisions around sponsorship and also around social media and a lot of creative content for 509, so you're not going to want to miss that one. Also, head over to iTunes, leave a rating or review. That would be great. Make sure that you're following us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Facebook, though, is where we go live. We actually just had NHRA speedster Megan Meyer on. This would have been last night, July 9th. This episode here that you're listening to released on July 10th of 2018. And it was on Facebook. She rocked it out. I am not even kidding you. We talked about email marketing and sponsorship proposals and non-endemic sponsorship. Phenomenal. So if you can't head over to Facebook and watch the replay, you're going to be able to hear the audio-only version because that will be released in a future episode as the audio-only podcast. So if you subscribe, you're definitely going to hit that one too. But if you go over to our Facebook page, give us a follow, you'll be able to see our future live guests. Now, to get some insider access into upcoming guests and also find out a little bit more ahead of time who's coming on live, you can check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook. Now, special thanks goes out to our sponsors. That includes AMSOIL, Armor Coat, SolderWeld, Bold Racing, TopThePodium.com, and Crash Addict Industries. And I also want to shout out our other partners, GSP XTV Axles, MBRP Power Sports, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, and One Stop Performance. I look forward to serving you again next week. Until then, have fun and ride safe.